So, I believe we are live on YouTube. This is the akhi&saltfish digital network. How you doing? Basically wanted to come on here today and discuss a few things to do with boxing and the like. So, obviously it's been a crazy weekend for boxing recently. We've had, in the last 24 hours, we've had Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva, the legend. We've had Jojo Diaz versus, I think it was Zapado. We've also had Lomachenko's comeback. And we've had, of course, a UFC card taking place in the Apex. Arnold Allen versus Kelvin Cater. But I think we've even been a bit quiet recently in terms of Sofa Sensei's and what we've picked up on in terms of recent fight events. So we've got loads of UFC to recap. I mean, Charles Oliveira is no longer the UFC lightweight champion of the world. He got submitted in the second round. Let me just re-say that. The guy with the most submissions in the UFC got submitted in the second round by Islam Makhachev. So listen, lots to recap, lots to go over. But now you know what we're going to talk about. Let's get stuck in. Hello and welcome to Sofa Sensei's on the akhi&saltfish digital network. You are joined by me, Kavan. Rochelle can't be here with us today, but we send him our best wishes, of course. Listen, we are about fights and combat sports. So some call us armchair experts, some call us couch coaches, but moreover, we are the Sofa Sensei's, and this is episode, I think it's like episode 16. So we're getting there, we're pushing, we're consistent, and yeah, let's get stuck in. Right. So where to start on what's been going on at the weekend? I can't see anything that, you know, if there's any viewers or any comments, but where to start? Right, let's have a look. I think the first place to start is Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva, right? So when this fight first got announced, there was a lot of talk around whether this fight should even be allowed to take place. You know, is it a mismatch either side, either way? So first of all, since Anderson Silva has left the UFC, he's since fought Julio Chavez Jr. And he beat him, and that's a former world champion in boxing. So we're thinking Anderson Silva's level is quite high. Then we go into his second fight against Tito Ortiz, who he knocked out, I think, in the first round. So again, Anderson Silva is still Anderson Silva. He's still that guy. Now, to give you a little bit of context as to where we stand on Anderson Silva and his greatness, being Sofa Sensei's and being the ages that we are, we never got to see Anderson Silva, or I never got to see, I won't speak for Rochelle, but I never got to see Anderson Silva at his peak. I never got to see him when he was completing those 16 consecutive title wins. Sorry, I'm a little bit ill. But what I did see was when I first started getting into UFC, it was around the time that he snapped his leg against Chris Weidman. So what year was that? Let's see what that is. Silva versus Weidman 2. That fight took place in 2013, so it's 9 years ago. Yeah. So that is the fight that we did see. And that was a sad fight. And I suppose one may say that was even like the beginning of the end of the Anderson Silva era, or certainly was. Then we, of course, saw him lose, well, however many fights back to back. I think towards the end of his career, he lost about 5 back to back. Let's have a look at his record. Anderson Silva. Let's see. Where is he? Anderson Silva. Here we go. So, after that leg snap with Weidman, lost. He had a no contest against Nick Diaz, lost to Michael Bisping, lost to Daniel Cormier, beat Derek Brunson, and then had 3 losses on the trot before getting released by the UFC. So since that fight with Chris Weidman, he 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He was about well, 5 losses in his last 7 fights. It's not a good look. So you know, you could have thought his career as a combat athlete was over. But then he of course has these boxing escapades with credible boxers and does credible things. So, you know, good on him, sort of thing. So the Jake Paul fight, let's get into that. Jake Paul fought Ben Askren, fought Tyron Woodley a couple of times, and yeah, obviously got power, but is obviously fighting against limited opposition as well. So there's that to factor in. When you put the two together, you think that maybe Anderson's going to have the edge, but it's a 47-year-old Anderson. But surely Anderson can win on points, right? Obviously, the fight has happened now. The best thing that happened was Anderson didn't get knocked out. So first of all, let's you know, give a round of applause to that. Second of all, Anderson did lose though, so that is quite sad. Anderson Silva, the UFC GOAT, at least one of 3, lost to Jake Paul. But he's 47 years old, so that's sort of okay. That's acceptable. That's to be expected. I think, therefore, as Sofa Sensei's, our position on all of this would be just get Jake Paul in a real fight. Let's get Jake Paul in a real fight. Okay, he's 6-0. He's a novice. Hasn't got any amateur experience. But let's see him in a real fight. Let's see how he reacts to really being hit by someone who can hit. Sorry, like I say, I'm a little bit ill, so you might hear the odd cough throughout this one. Who should Jake Paul fight next? I'd love to see, of course, the Tommy Fury fight. Tommy again was chatting shit about, you know, let's get this fight on. Mate, I don't know how he is so brazen. I'd love to see the fight, but like I said, I don't know how he is so brazen because, bro, you had this opportunity to fight loads of times, twice, and you pulled out each time. This is a you problem. This isn't anyone else's problem. This is a you problem, bro. So, you know, you need to resolve that ASAP. Right, so there's that. The fight itself, I think we did see evolutions within Jake Paul's game. He obviously is better than he was before. I mean, his gas tank was all right. 8 rounds against Anderson Silva, who was pressing hard, did land a couple good shots. Not obviously the Anderson Silva that we know, not really the counter-punching athlete that we're familiar with. But, yeah, Jake Paul, obviously, he made his mark. The frustrating thing is, and I think I'm a little bit fatigued with this whole YouTube boxing thing, is the guy's getting what I would consider a disproportionate amount of credit for beating an over-the-hill Anderson Silva. 47 years old. Get him in there with a live wire, and then we can talk. And he'll probably win. He might win against some sort of southern area Tommy Fury kind of guy. They're suggesting KSI. I think KSI is a little bit too small. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really excited, as you can tell from that fight. That being said, I am excited for what is on the horizon for Jake. I'd like to see him in big competitive fights, but it has to be competitive. Otherwise, it's a bit like, why waste the time? Particularly when we see a lot of these athletes, like Nate Diaz was there last night, got in a little altercation with some of Jake Paul's team. It's just a little bit sad. Like, these guys have put their lives on the line for us for so long, and then they are reduced to having these petty fights, you know, for money. I get it, it's a sport, but there's a little bit of a conflict in there with me, particularly when they're taking damage. And you know, on this channel, we're not really the biggest fans of fighters getting unnecessarily damaged. Talking of unnecessary damage on fighters, recently I listened to the Lisa McLennan podcast on boxing life stories by Tris Dixon. Really fascinating insight into into Gerald McLennan and how he is now. He's 55 years old, turned 55 the other day, and his sister looking after him is doing a amazing job. But she talks about how tough it is. You know, he's not deaf, but he is blind. He's completely blind. Often he has these sort of aggressive moments. You know, it's obviously an emotional time for him, trying to navigate. In his mind, he's a champion, he's a fighter, but obviously physically he's not that anymore, and you know that is going to create some internal conflict and internal turmoil. So she's always navigating that and dealing with that. So Yeah, really interesting insight. I definitely recommend checking it out. The Boxing Life Stories podcast is great, and hopefully one day we can get Tris on the podcast to talk about that and many more things. What else happened in the combat sports world? So we had the UFC as well. I stayed up a little bit late and watched a few of those things. I'm just missed out on the main event, but I will go through the card very briefly. The card itself was headlined by Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen. So the Brit Arnold Allen. Arnold won second round, knee injury to Kattar. Arnold was looking sharp though, so I think it would have been an Arnold win anyway. He's on the ascension, and Calvin Kattar is on the decline. And it's a shame because Calvin's 34 years old now. At one stage was considered perhaps the best boxer in the UFC, but now he's on that sort of downward trajectory. And obviously getting injured. And listen, I still can't get over that. I think it was January 21 or maybe January 22. That fight with Max Holloway, real life-shortening fight that was. So, we wish him the best, obviously. And now Arnold's in that spot where he's 19-1. It would be nice to see him get a title shot, but then when you factor in what happened last weekend with Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski and Charles Oliveira, then they're trying to line up Makhachev fighting. Defending his lightweight title against Alexander Volkanovski, obviously the 145 champion in the UFC. So that obviously holds up the division of which these two men are from, and therefore what's next for Arnold Allen highly depends on what happens with Alexander Volkanovski. He may have to end up fighting someone like Josh Emmett, who's at the top of the division as well. So, or Max Holloway, which both fights would be very, very interesting. Gives Arnold the opportunity to show his skill set. Sorry. Wow. Maybe I should have thought about doing this live stream. Anyway, next, what I did get to catch wasn't the co-main event. So Tim Means versus Max Griffin. Congratulations to Max on that one. I got to catch Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Jared Vanderaa. That was a heavyweight fight. A little bit messy, but entertaining. Waldo is, by all accounts, a baseball player or former baseball player. He's now 8-0 in MMA. I think this was his UFC debut. Vanderaa isn't, I wouldn't call him a journeyman, but he's 12-10. So he's pretty much a gatekeeper of sorts within the heavyweight scene within MMA. Look, great fight actually. Really interesting. You could see the speed difference. Baseball seems to transfer relatively well over to the odd right hand, etc. Leg kicks were really the difference within that fight, I thought, in terms of shutting down Waldo's game, although he obviously won the fight. I still think I'm still in awe of all these fighters when I see them take the sort of shots that they do, because these guys are just different levels of tough. The last two fights I want to talk about on the card are Tresean Gore and Josh Fremd. Listen, that fight was violent. Josh looked absolutely huge for middleweight. Tresean, sorry. Big fan of him. I watched that series of The Ultimate Fighter with Brian Ortega and Alexander Volkanovski coaching. Tresean was on there. Obviously a hard hitter. He actually lost his UFC debut, unfortunately. And he obviously didn't win the show. Brian Battle won. So, it was great to see him reach winning ways. He literally popped off Josh's head off his neck. Like, that guillotine was violent. It wasn't, you wouldn't say it was a technique-driven guillotine. It was just pure violence and strength and grit and determination. So congratulations to him for getting that done and finally getting to winning ways in the UFC. I wish him the best in terms of his career. To be honest, if I'm being brutally honest, at this stage, don't see him becoming a champion, but I don't think he needs to. Hopefully he makes enough money doing what it is he does. Next we had, or before that we had Khalil Roundtree versus Dustin Jacoby. Yeah, great fight. I'm a big fan of Khalil Roundtree. I seen him fight Eric Anders. That was when he first popped on my radar. And just the Muay Thai style of him and how he makes it fit so well within MMA was something I was immediately captivated by. The violence, the aggression, the speed, the power. yeah, amazing stuff. Khalil certainly is a scary guy, but when he wins these fights, he's obviously very emotional as well. And the sort of things he said after the fights on the mic have been quite touching as well. So credit to him. The first thing I noticed as this fight was starting was the shape that Khalil came into the octagon with. I've never seen him this conditioned before. He's never been in this good shape before. I think he's a former middleweight, so obviously he's being the weight that he's at now, light heavy, he's obviously putting on mass, but he seems to have sort of put on lean mass now. Previously he looked a little bit chubby, and it's not a problem, but you can just see the difference in the work that he's putting in. Dustin is obviously sort of kickboxing pedigree. I think he's a former glory champion, so he's obviously got that skill set, and you could see he was just strategic. He was almost sterile, nice jab, nice fundamentals, nice footwork. Khalil at times looked a little bit flustered, particularly in the second round. I thought very very aggressive in the first half of the first round. In the second round, a little bit vulnerable. Second part of the round, sorry. In the second round, equally as vulnerable. Third round, aggression. That's the best thing. It makes me cringe every time I see it because it's like, oh, I don't want you to get knocked out in the process. But his aggression, let's just talk about that Modestus Bukauskas win of Khalil Roundtree's. The violence of which he decimated his knee still leaves marks on us. So, yeah, credit to Khalil Roundtree for getting that win there. It looks like as well, in fights they have the A side and the B side. So it'll be like, oh no, okay. No, I think it's the way this website is set up. I was going to say it looks like the A side won, but I think that's probably just the way this website is set up. Anyway, that's the UFC that took place this weekend. But I want to talk about that UFC 280. So I was in London at the time. I was watching a comedy show. I was watching Joe Rogan actually in the O2. So that's if you didn't know, that's a no phone venue for comedy shows. Well, that particular show was anyway. So I had no idea of checking on what was going on the card, and annoyingly, it's one of the very few cards that that the UFC had at European times that work well for the UK. And also, very annoyingly, it was a pay-per-view. So it looks like that's going to be creeping in a lot more. £20 pay-per-view to watch that card. I didn't watch it because I wasn't there, but yeah. The fights that I was interested in on that card was obviously the main event, so Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev, but I was also interested in watching TJ Dillashaw versus Aljamain, and I'm trying to figure out what there was 3 fights I was interested in. UFC. Oh, Sean O'Malley versus what's his name? Peter Yan. Yeah. Was interested in those 3 fights there. I'm sure the rest of the card was good as well, but the ones that I was particularly interested in were those 3. I'll go over the results quickly. Charles Oliveira obviously got submitted by Islam Makhachev in the second round. Aljamain Sterling TKO'd TJ Dillashaw, whose shoulders popped out mid-fight in the second round. Peter Yan lost by decision to Sean O'Malley. Those are huge seismic things in each of the divisions. So, if we look at Charles Oliveira's previous performances, we thought that Charles Oliveira was going to be the guy to stick around for a long, long time. Particularly gets great when he gets hurt. And Islam did hurt him, and we thought that was going to be when he'd switch on. That wasn't the case. Islam clearly is a fantastic pedigree. You can't really doubt him when he's got that Khabib mentor in his corner who is so great as a lightweight in particular as well. Yeah. But I thought Charles would win, and he didn't. So I think what it does as well for me makes me reframe a little bit those last few performances of Charles Oliveira. So what is his run? He fought Gaethje, Chandler, and Dustin Poirier, not in that order. But he also fought Tony Ferguson before that. And it's a bit like, well, actually, Tony Ferguson is slightly washed, and slightly was washed at the time. Michael Chandler, good fighter, explosive fighter, but almost always second best and vulnerable. Dustin Poirier, again, second best of the top tier in the division. And Justin Gaethje, again, see below. No criticisms. They're all great fighters, but they're not Islam Makhachevs. And that's obviously, this is revisionist history, right? I'm looking back with rose-tinted glasses thinking, oh, yeah. But at the time, it felt like Charles was doing amazing things, and he was. But I think when we look at it in context now, we realise Islam's just a different level. So congratulations to Islam. They're trying to put him in now with Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champion. I really like Alexander Volkanovski. I think he's great. So I welcome that. He's well-rounded. He is fantastic in the division below. I wonder what the difference in weight is going to do. Although, that being said, I think we've mentioned this on the podcast before. He's already fought at 215. He's weighed 215 as a rugby player. So listen, he's not afraid of having weight on him, nor being a strong guy. So yeah, interesting. Aljamain Sterling seems to be growing into his championship reign. I don't think anyone expected the performance he pulled off against Peter Yan in that second time round, and he did it. He genuinely solidified his status as a champion. Perhaps the best thing to ever happen to him was that knee. TJ Dillashaw, 36 now, I believe, and I'm a big fan of TJ, right? I'm a big fan of TJ. I wanted him to win this fight, even though Aljamain's a Jamaican. I wanted TJ to win this fight because I'm a big fan. I think the first time I really tuned into a TJ Dillashaw fight was that first yo, I might have to pause this stream. Sorry, 1 second. I'm going to drink some water. That first Cody Garbrandt fight, was a massive fan of that and of the TJ then. And, how do I put it? I've been hooked ever since. I like his style. I like his aggression. I like, obviously he went down to 125, took EPO, blah, 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 blah. There's something about TJ, him being a winner at all costs, that intrigues me as a viewer, as a fan. So, yeah, shout out him. I'm not really a fan of drug cheats, obviously. We'll get into that later. But, yeah, it was a shame to see him go out like that. And what's even more saddening now is that, he's so convinced he's going to come back. He's saying things like, I'm not going to go out like that. Bro, maybe you do just go out like that. You're 36 years old. Your body's been through it. I think you've been a champion twice now, or if not once at least. Maybe you should just call it a day for everyone else's around you's sake. You don't need this for money. You're only searching for the glory, and that's okay. But at this stage, it's perhaps a little bit out of your reach because the sport passes you by. Talking of the sport passing people by, or if you flip that, people, new things in the sport. Sean O'Malley beat who many would consider, myself included, the number 2 bantamweight in the world in Peter Yan, and Sean O'Malley beat him. I've not seen this fight in detail, in depth, and every credible source that I personally use in terms of objectivity on the sport suggests that Peter Yan actually won. But in any event, it was an incredibly close fight, and actually on the night, in the moment, it's incredibly difficult to be as analytical as these sources that I'm referring to have been. They haven't got time to slow down each tape, watch each shot, judge the high, medium, and low impact of these shots. Obviously, it is their job to do that in the moment. They are judges, and they should be qualified and able to do that. But to the extent of which these sources, by which I mean the Weasel, are doing that, there's not so much. You can't compare the two activities. So I understand if the judges didn't get it wrong. It wasn't like it was a shutout for Peter Yan and then Sean O'Malley got the reward. It was a close fight, whichever way you look at it. And I think in instances like that, you can't call it a robbery. Yeah. So that's that big card that I wanted to recap from last week, because I think that's really, really necessary. Also, last week, we saw boxing, I believe. I can't really remember, if I'm honest with you. No, we'll move on because I can't remember it. But you know what? Talking of boxing, let's get into Conor Benn then. That's where we're at, right? Before we get into Conor Benn, actually, I want to get into Tyson Fury and his fight now with Chisora coming up on December the 3rd. The way I see it is this. They're friends and they're making each other money. I don't necessarily support or agree with that, but I don't disagree with it either. I'm not completely against it. It's a business. I just think it's a little bit unfair for the fans to be duped into something like that. Look, I'm not going to pay for it, so they're not going to make any money out of me directly. And I believe if you are wanting to watch a competitive fight with true intentions and true ramifications for the division, then maybe you don't pay for it either. But ultimately, do what you want, right? I'll watch it, but that's another story. And obviously, I'm a big fan of Chisora. I think he should have retired probably a few losses ago. But nevertheless, I'm glad he's getting his money. And what I will say is I hope this is kind of like a last hurrah for Chisora. I hope he does hang up sometime soon because I think he needs the physical rest, to be honest with you. Talking of Chisora, actually, and him retiring, there was a tweet that went around on Twitter the other day, and at akhi&saltfish on Twitter responded. And we said something along the lines of, the tweet was, if you could, create a documentary on any fighter around any one fight or any retirement, that sort of thing, what fight would you choose? And I said, I'd like to do a documentary on Chisora's last fight and then 2 years into retirement. Just following him around, seeing what his life turns out to be like. Because obviously there's the physical ramifications of all these tough fights. And, it's not even just the losses, right? You can see he's got like 12, 13 losses. That's not the big deal here. Even in the wins, he's taking damage. Okay. Regardless of the wins, regardless of the losses, the number of fights. And regardless of the number of fights, it's the number of sparring rounds. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The amount of damage his brain must have taken. So we obviously hope he's all right. But I think it would be fascinating viewing as a Sofa Sensei to see what Chisora turns out to be, post-career sort of thing. So that's Chisora and Fury. Wow, I never thought I'd say that in 2022. They're having a trilogy of a fight that is 0-2 so far. Wow. Joshua is obviously another thing to talk about there in terms of the heavyweight division in boxing. It's been revealed he's not going to be fighting this year. Sort of, I would have liked to have seen Joshua in November, December, against someone like Dylan White, or even Zhang, the Chinese heavyweight who just fought Filip Hrgović. I would like to have seen that fight. Even just, nah. I almost said Dave Allen, but that's, nah. I'd like to have seen Joshua back just to build up some confidence, and I'd like to see him back in winning ways. Obviously, the big risk is if Joshua loses, then I think that's 3 on the bounce then, and then what? But next year maybe his body does need the rest. I think his brain definitely needs the rest. I don't mean that in terms of damage, but I mean that in terms of just being out in the spotlight for a little bit and being all right with yourself. Lots to consider for Joshua there in terms of it's demanding. I can only imagine it's demanding being a public figure. Where so much is placed on your winning, not just your participating, not just your building of the sport, but your winning. If you're not winning, you're not valuable, and in no other field is that so evident than in boxing. And I would say combat sports, but MMA has a very lax attitude to losses. Thankfully, what I will also say is Conor Benn. This is the thing we'll end on as well because we're getting to that time. Sofa Sensei'S, we spoke about Conor Benn on our Instagram channel. So while I'm here, if you are watching this or listening to this, please do not forget to like wherever you're listening to this. Leave us a 5-star review. Drop us a comment. Drop us an email, akhi&saltfish@gmail.com. But most importantly, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or follow us if you're listening on any of the podcast platforms. We do genuinely appreciate it, and I think for this to go broader than where we are right now, those little things help us out an immense amount. So if you could like it, share it, subscribe it, all those sorts of good things, it would really help us out. Sofa Sensei'S themselves, we can be found on @Sofa Sensei'S on Instagram or @akhi&saltfish on Twitter. And we also have other shows on the network as well, such as Before Our Friends Die, where we have the conversations we want to have before we leave this planet. But then we also have Cool, Fine, Don't, Wicked, which is about music. So make sure you check that out if you're interested in any of those. Worth saying as well, actually, like I said, we've spoken about Conor Benn in the aftermath of that October 8th failed event. Instagram. We went Instagram live quickly to talk about that. And basically, it was a lot of disappointment. We're disappointed in Conor Benn. We're disappointed in the show, around the show, the fight's going on, the fight's not sure, now the fight's off. They should have just cancelled the fight a long time. Now, since then, a lot of details have come out. So Conor Benn failed 2 tests. So one in July and one in, I believe, August or September, something like that. And basically, this fight shouldn't have been made in the first place for October 8th because he'd already failed a drug test. And I don't care, if we're talking about trace amounts or small bits of drugs, whatever. No. It doesn't matter. This guy had drugs in his system. Now, if we're running a sport like Pride, or we're running a sport like the WWE, or we're running a sport like, I don't know, insert strongmen, whatever, then cool. No big deal. Also, if we're running a sport like boxing where some people do, openly care about drug testing and others don't, then, pick a side, basically. But from when you have VADA testing in the contract and you are a self-confessed proponent of, a clean sport, then if your fighter fails a test, pull them out the fight. I don't buy any of this, we're not legally able to pull the fight, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but maybe you postpone it. Do you know what I mean? Because now you got egg on your face. And it's not even about the egg on the face. It's about we're putting fighters in the firing line to be potentially damaged by drug cheats. And the reason I say drug cheats is because it was stipulated in the contract that there will be drug testing. So obviously that's something on the front of their mind. If both parties go in there, careless against the whole drugs thing, then maybe there is space for a drug, a PED division. Yeah, maybe there is space for that. But Eubank himself agreed to the fight. First of all, because it's the week before, and who else is going to turn down £4 million? Second of all, he obviously believed he could win. Third of all, he was advised by a doctor that it wasn't a performance enhancing amount. I get all of that, but it's worth bearing in mind as well that Chris Eubank Jr. is his own manager. So his promoter, Wasserman Boxing, should be looking out for him in instances like that, because he's obviously not going to have all the information at hand to make a fully informed decision. He wants the money. He's a prize fighter. So yeah, I don't think Conor Benn's done the best job in terms of cleaning all of that up. He should have come out right away with his explanation, if particularly this has already happened in July, because then surely you're aware of something being wrong in your system. If it is legitimate, or obviously if you're taking drugs, then that's a different story, but if it's a legitimate contamination, then you're aware of that in July. So you taking time and not saying anything of note or credit before the other day, all 2-3 weeks later after the event's been cancelled, that's not a good look. And then to say things like, am I stupid? Bro, like, I'm not that kind of guy. People know me. Or you'd have to be an idiot. Or Conor, you're the same guy who got a beard transplant. Bro, obviously it's clear I can't grow a beard, innit? So, maybe I will get some details off you in terms of where you got that from. But equally, you do take shortcuts. And that's okay. Not a big deal. But in this context of boxing, it is a big deal. So you can't rely on the whole, you'd have to be an idiot. Do I look stupid? Do I look like I was born yesterday? Those aren't legitimate arguments in this case. Tell us where you got it from then. If that's what the case, if you are legitimately innocent in all of this, tell us how it got in your system. Because as an athlete, it's your responsibility to be fully accountable for what is in your system. Yeah, weird turn of events. I think I don't know. Let me not even say what I think, because I don't know what the legal ramifications are of me saying my actual opinion. But he went up to fight a bigger guy, right? And I wouldn't say Conor Benn suddenly got good, but all things came at perfect timing. And maybe he had some assistance. I don't know. allegedly, all those sorts of things there. But nevertheless, as a man, I wish him the best. He's 25 years old. This can't be a nice situation for him. This can't be a nice time in his life. If indeed he made a mistake, then, it is what it is. Like, the world's going to forgive him. He's young. He's going to get over it. And I'm sure he'll be back. And if it was something of which he is innocent of, then obviously I wish him justice. So, there's that. He's not a bad person, but this is just a shit occurrence all round. I don't know, Eddie Hearn, and something's happening with Eddie Hearn, and Matchroom. They're losing favour. They're not doing things in the interest of the fans or the sport. This whole DAZN thing isn't appealing anymore, really. I mean, we had a card last night. What was it? Jordan Gill for Kiko Martinez. Kiko, by the way, just keeps on going. So credit to him, man. Jesus Christ. The man keeps on going. So shout out Kiko Martinez. Legend in the game, 36 years old, just chinned Jordan Gill. In his last fight, he broke Josh Warrington's jaw. In his fight before that, he knocked out IBF world champion Kid Galahad to win the, I want to say featherweight world championship. I'm not really entirely sure what weight it was. I'm pretty sure it was featherweight. But it's mad because, like, how does he keep doing it? Obviously, we just spoke about Conor Benn. I'll leave that linked there. But yeah, it's very interesting. 36 years old and he's still putting on performances like that. That was a good fight. Johnny Fisher fought, I don't know who, knocked him out in a round. Not really. Bosh. I'm not really interested in it, if I'm honest. Who else was on that card? Obviously, Katie Taylor fought her mandatory, won over 10 rounds. Didn't watch that. The boxing last weekend. The fight that I genuinely enjoyed, Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. And then you had Michaela Mayer versus Baumgarten. That's what I want to talk about. Fantastic fights. Both of them, props to them. Those fights were amazing. Watching it live on the TV, I did think Michaela Mayer won. Looking back, I think that's probably the influence of the Sky commentary. But no, I really enjoyed that. Really, really, really enjoyed that. Those couple fights. So credit to those two ladies there. Alicia, obviously a specimen athlete, and Michaela, a well-schooled boxer. But Alicia won and basically refused any sort of rematch. And at this point, I see her get dismissed in the build-up to the fight. I get it. If you don't want to give her the same. If you want to give her the same disgrace that she gave you in the lead up to the fight, so be it. Such is life. The other thing as well, and sorry about all this coughing, I'll be better next time. The other thing as well, worth bearing in mind, Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. That fight was genuinely a really, really enjoyable fight. So credit to both ladies. I think we recorded an episode where, do you remember when Eubank fought Williams and Claressa Shields was on that card? I think the debut of Caroline Dubois as well. And we did a little demo episode when we first got the equipment with Gabrielle and like my sister Gabrielle and my brother Jerome. And that episode, I don't know where it is. I don't think we're ever going to put it out. But fantastic episode. And then was the first time I think I watched a Claressa Shields fight. Fantastic fight. Obviously, her skill set is just on another level, particularly to the opponent she was fighting at that time. And you could just see it as well when she was fighting Savannah. The skill set is different. Like, she's a level above, if not 2 levels above. Like, the speed, the tenacity, the grit, even to some respects, the power difference didn't look so noticeable as you'd think it would be against Savannah Marshall, who is obviously a tough cookie. Savannah's footwork didn't look amazing. Savannah didn't look really comfortable at a lot of points in the fight. Obviously, it's a fight you're not going to be comfortable, but Claressa certainly looked comfortable in the fire. For me, it was just an amazing display of boxing, and I'm a big fan of Claressa. However, what I must say is I don't want to criticize her too much, but I think Claressa is a little bit insecure. And I'll explain. Now, a little while ago, sorry, I just coughed clean in the mic. Sorry, guys. A little while ago, I watched or I listened to a podcast called the High Performance Podcast and it was an episode with Johnny Wilkinson. I highly recommend it. Honestly, one of my favorite, most influential podcasts of all time. And Johnny Wilkinson spoke about, his own insecurity as an athlete, and he had to evolve as a human being, as a man, to put basically the same level of importance onto washing the dishes as he did to what do you call it? Washing the dishes and what do you call it? Oh yeah, playing rugby, being a champion, being an athlete, being a winner, winning the World Cup in 2004, and excuse me, yeah. And the reason he had to do that is because if he tied his identity to being that World Cup winner in 2004, nothing else would compare. Nothing else was important. Nothing else had value. And actually, that moment's past. That moment's gone. You have to be in the moment in all things and be completely present and enjoy all things, because moments will go. But check out our podcast, Before Our Friends Die. That's about memento mori. Life will end. It is inevitable. Not in a morbid way, not in a negative way, but just enjoy the moment, because that is the case. And he discovered that throughout that process of being so attached to that World Cup win, he realized the only way that would have value is if he wished negativity on the subsequent teams. Like if I I'm trying to see if you can see it in the picture. You can't see it, but over there, there's an award from the German Staff Network, at the University of Northampton. Whoop, 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 whoop. Great award, love it. Picasso Jasper 2021. A fantastic award. And I'm very grateful to the German Staff Network for that award. But I recognize work has to go on. I have to keep grinding, keep doing things, right? And I can't tie my whole identity to that one award, because other awardees will and have come along. And therefore, my value drops every time a new awardee comes in. And that just leads to insecurity, right? You're just like, I just want to be the best and all those sorts of things. And they have value to some extent. But Claressa, since the fight, has just been really weird on social media, just saying, I'm so... How do I put this? She tweeted something the other day. Like, Savannah posted a picture of her punching Claressa. She's like, yeah, you landed that shot, but I slipped it, and who won the fight? And it just comes across like she still hasn't proved herself yet, but she has. Claressa, you've proved yourself. You're actually the GOAT. There's no debate. I see the debate around Katie Taylor. Forget that. You're the GOAT. Undisputed 3 divisions. 2-time Olympic gold medalist. No one's doing what you're doing. You're 28 years old. Even if right now Katie Taylor's resume is a little bit stronger, you're 28. You've got like 8 years. Well, she's got 8 years on you. She's going to retire next year after. You could still go. You could still do this. So just accept your greatness and stop trying to prove yourself to everyone and explain yourself. Because a rising tide lifts all boats. And sometimes that insecurity where you're trying to bring people down and you did this, but I did this. And listen, it's not a good look, particularly when, unfortunately for you, you're the flag bearer of a sport in its infancy, of women's boxing. It is boxing, and I'm a big proponent and advocate of calling it boxing. But there is a separate audience. There is a separate fan base. So you're building that, and you're a leader in that. That's fantastic. But believe in your own self. You don't have to prove yourself. Trust me. That's all I said to Claressa Shields. But fantastic fight, amazing. I think that's it. In terms of an update, that's where we're at in the combat sports world. Loads going on. Obviously, Lomachenko come back. He won his fight. Lomachenko's getting old. He's 34 years old. I don't think he's ever going to have a greatest of all time type of resume. They're trying to line up him fighting Haney. Obviously, the Undisputed, he had his rematch with Kambosos last weekend, beat him again. Haney looked terrible at the weight, though. He looked really, really bad at the weight. So if we do indeed see that fight, I don't know. I think Haney wins. I think Haney, again, it's a bit like that Crossroads fight with, well, it's a little bit like this with Peter Yan and Sean O'Malley, and that. You got the new blood coming through, man. Or I suppose it's more accurately Aljamain versus TJ. TJ's the old dog. Like, you've had your time. It's time to move on. So yeah, there's lots going on. Congrats to Lomachenko. Glad to have him back. Obviously, in the midst of all his turmoil at home, it must be difficult to focus. And maybe this is one of those moments where actually he duped us a little bit by looking slightly out of sorts, despite winning. And actually, when it comes down to fighting people like Haney or even Shakur Stevenson, then Loma's going to show up. I think one thing that was evident though last night was that he's obviously tiny for the division, so that might play its card against him. Other than that, I think we're where we need to be. Don't forget, we've got that Instagram live where we spoke about Conor Benn live in the reaction sort of thing. We also spoke about Alistair Overeem. Rico Verhoeven had his fight last night and knocked out his opponent in round 5, so good on him. That maybe lines up Alistair Overeem versus Rico Verhoeven. The other thing to mention in terms of content is we recently had a chat with Siju from MMA TV, the founder of MMA TV. Fantastic chat, very interesting. Nice to get a behind the scenes look at MMA TV and broadcasting in sports. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. We are Sofa Sensei's, available on the akhi&saltfish digital network. You can find us at Sofa Sensei's on Instagram, at akhi&saltfish on Twitter, akhi&saltfish@gmail.com. If you've got any questions or comments, we'd really appreciate a like, a subscription, a follow, a share, all those positive things, including comments. Let us know what you like. Let us know what we can improve on and all those sorts of great things as well. So, yeah, really appreciate you if you listen to this. Again, massive apologies for all my coughing and poor voice throughout. I'll be better next time, trust me. If you missed it, today is the 30th of October and we released a lot of content during Black History Month where we celebrated black voices throughout the month. So at the start of the month we had Shaban talking about her journey into coding, traveling the world, etc. And then we got to know Shaban in the second week. In the third week we explored mindful black dad. Ellie came on to speak about his journey into content creation for and community building for other black dads, and it's a phenomenal episode as well. And then we got to know Ellie as well. Then last week this week rather, for the final week of Black History Month, we had 2 cobblers on. So if you're a Sofa Sensei, the chances are you're a football fan as well. So if you're a Northampton Town Football Club fan or a fan of Akin Odemeo or Ali Quaco, then you'll be a massive fan of this episode with those 2 guys on our YouTube channel and on all podcast platforms. Make sure you check it out, and we'll catch you again next time. See you soon. Take care. Right, obviously, if you're watching this, or even if you're listening to this, the live is still on, so you're gonna see a different view. 3, 2, 1. I'll see you next time.